Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad you could join me this afternoon. I'm back to Christmas cards. So I've got a pretty Christmas card with using the Poinsettia Place Designer Series paper. And I'm really pleased with the way it came out, and so I'm using both the stamp set, the die set, and the paper. So let's just get started. Okay, here is my card. Let me bring out the paper so I can show it to you. The paper is very pretty, and it is this paper, and this is the sheet I'm using, and it has this pretty little berry and leaf pattern. Then there is this paper. Let me just take it out here. And this paper is similar in that it's got white poinsettias, but they're smaller and in clusters, and there's some evergreens on these. These have pine cones and other kinds of leaves. And the back side of that one is a brown pine cone pattern. Then there is this red berry paper, which is very pretty, I think, and it has a wood grain on the back side of it. And then there's this pretty green poinsettia with a green, almost a fleur-de-lis pattern on the back. Then there's pine cones and pine branches here with the same motif, but all in green on the back. Then there is this one, pretty, isn't it? Yellows and green and red holly with a pattern on the back in green. Now, on this one, it is called Poinsettia Place Designer Series paper, and the complementary colors are Bumblebee, Garden Green, Old Olive, Real Red, Soft Suede, and Whisper White. Now, when I made this card, I used the Garden Green. And one of the things that I'm going to change on this one, because I didn't like how stark it is compared to the green that is in the paper. So I am going to an Old Olive, which is the other green complementary color in the card. And the leaves for the poinsettias I didn't like at all. I just think it's just the wrong color green for this particular paper. So what we have to make this card, I have a Whisper White base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. Then I have a piece of Bumblebee that is 4 1/8 by, 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 for the front of my card. And then I did a little sleight of hand thing here. I have my piece of Designer Series paper cut 2 3/4 by 5 1/4, and then I am cutting this piece of Old Olive to go on one side that is 5 3/4 by 5/8, and then this little strip that is just 1 tick short of 1/4 inch to go on this side. And I wanted lots of the Bumblebee and the green to show through, and that's why I did it this way rather than layering across. Then for the inside, I have a piece of Old Olive cut 4 by 5 1/4, a piece of Bumblebee cut 3 3/4 by 5, and then a piece of Whisper White that's cut 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. So it's just a little bit, a further 1/4 inch down. Then you will need a piece of scrap of Old Olive to cut out your leaves for the poinsettia. And then you will also need about, well, this might be too much, but close to a half a page to die cut your poinsettias. And I've already die cut mine, by the way, using my new Stampin' Up! Die cut machine. I'll bring it out here so you can see it. And I'm so far very pleased with it. It is extremely compact, very easy to use, and it, maybe because it's brand new, but it cuts like butter. Boy, I could hardly wait for this machine to come out, because I use my machines when I can, when we have the ability to have card classes. I use my machines for people to be able to cut and emboss. And I have two machines that are just about dead. They require shims and all kinds of finagling to get things cut right. So I am thrilled to be able to have this machine, and I can hardly wait for the minis to come out. So this machine has a pretty slim profile. It's heavy. I think it's heavier than my Big Shot was. But it's very compact in the way that it's put together. There are finger holes on either side, and then these platforms lay down flat. There's no suction, but it's heavy enough that it doesn't move. This handle is permanent. It doesn't collapse, and then you've got your handle to turn. Now, it's got a base plate. The plates are numbered. So this base plate that I have here is numbered 1. Then there is a die adapter, so like the old thin die adapter. Then there are 2 cutting plates in the clear lucite. And it's real easy to tell if you want to flip yours back and forth to keep them from warping as much as possible. I would say that the big thing I've noticed with this machine, oh, by the way, these are numbered 3, and it comes with these, let's see, it comes with the base plate, the thin die adapter, the 2 cutting plates, and it comes with one more plate that is used for cutting the 3D embossing folders, and it's this one. Now, if you have a Big Shot and you bought the purple clear lucite to do the embossing folders, it's exactly the same as this. This is exactly the same as that base plate. This is exactly the width of the thin die adapter, so the pieces are pretty interchangeable. But I will say this about this machine: so far this thing cuts like butter. There's something about the way they've put this together, and I don't know whether it's brand new and it'll loosen up over time. Could be. But what I've noticed is that you really don't have to put something through twice. Often I got in the habit of making my sandwich and putting it on my machine and then running it through and then running it back. And this cuts, at least so far, perfectly with one pass, which is very nice, because then your machine, your plates don't go through as many times. It's not as easy for them to get warped, and you're not cranking and cranking. So far, so good. I love this machine. I just got it and just started using it here in the last couple of days, and I'm pretty stoked. It's working really well. So I'm going to set this aside, because as you know, I don't like cutting on videos, because I think it's a terrible waste of time, and the last thing I want to do is waste your time. So that's what we have, and again, these are the pieces. And what I did with this, the inks I used, I'm going to use Old Olive, and I'm using Soft Suede. And the stamp set, of course, is the poinsettia stamp set. It's called Poinsettia Petals, and I'm using all 3 sizes. And with my dies, which are also the dies for this stamp set, and the dies are called poinsettia dies. And there are the dies that I used. In fact, mine are still kind of taped to what I was cutting. There are 3 sizes of poinsettia leaves, the very large and the medium and the small, and they coordinate with the large, medium, and small poinsettia leaves in this stamp set. And there are these pieces that fit inside. So for instance, this is the largest die, and let's see if I can get it turned around the direction that I want it. I think it's like that. Yes. And these pieces, if you run these through while you're cutting your die, will emboss these impressions on your stamped image or your unstamped image. And it does that with all 3 sizes. Then there's 2 very small poinsettia dies that have an embossing feature on them as well, but there is not a stamp for this one. And there's your berries, and here's the stamp that's the poinsettia that's cut like this. Then this piece is this, which is like a piece of pine, and then there's some holly leaves and a place to fill in the berries here, and there's a couple of sentiments. It's a lovely Merry Christmas. Anyway, let's just get on with it here. So in order to do this, I'm going to go ahead and stamp, even though I've done mine, because I want to show you what it was I did to get exactly the effect that I did. So I'm using the soft suede, and I'm using the soft suede because in the paper these poinsettias are outlined in this brown. And so I've got my stamp sets here, and what I've been doing is inking up my poinsettia leaves and then stamping off once, because that if your ink pad is juicy, then that can make a difference. And so I'm stamping off once here and then stamping my poinsettia on a separate piece of paper here. So very, very faint. And I'm doing that with all 3 sizes of the poinsettia stamps. There we go. And then once with the big one, this one is big enough, I'm going to bring the stamp set to the image. Look at that, and it looks like it needs. And stamp off once, and then stamp my image. And then these are the images that I cut out with the dies. And I did one earlier where I used the one that gave the embossed impression on the leaves, and the stamping was plenty. I think if I were doing a plain piece of white without the stamping, I might go ahead and use those pieces. I'm going to clean this one off because what I did was I stamped this largest one additional time in green. And I did it on this card that I made originally here. I did it in the garden green, and I really didn't like the way it looked. So what I'm doing on this one is on our piece of old olive that I have, I'm going to ink this up in my old olive ink. and stamp off once, and then stamp on my old olive paper, and that's a very faint image. You may not need to stamp off because it's old olive on old olive. This is what mine turned out like. Turned out a little bit darker than that, so I don't think I stamped off on that one. But that I'm using as the leaves behind the poinsettia. Okay, so that is the stamping for this, and then it is a matter of then using your dies to cut those out, and here are mine. And what I did to build my flower is that I used my bone folder and I curled the leaves downward, curled them all down, and that is on all of them. Then on my Pierce mat, what I did was, you could use a pencil or a pen or the back side of your water brush, anything that's got kind of a blunt end. And what I did was kind of so that the inside piece goes down, and then these outside leaves, this part indents, and then those outside leaves kind of stick up a little bit. Kind of makes them look like a little spider with legs. And it really adds beautiful dimension to your poinsettia. So I used glue dots to put my pieces together, and let me move that out of the way. And so what I did was I used a glue dot or two on the back of my flower, and I'm going to add two, and then I set it in place so that the green leaves showed out to the side. So now it looks like a poinsettia with a with leaves behind it. So this one has also been now bent, so I'm going to add a glue dot on the back side of that one and set it so that the leaves are between the leaves of the larger piece. Then one more here that I'm going to add to this one and add a glue dot to it, and again go between the leaves, so that when you are done, you end up with a flower that really has a lot of dimension. And when we get ready for this, we will add a dimensional on the back of this to set this in place, to anchor this center down and allow these petals to stand up. It's really a very pretty look and very easy to do. All right, let's start putting the pieces together for our card. So this is the inside, and I do have one more bit of stamping. Okay, so for this piece, what I'm going to do is, in the stamp set is this whole poinsettia, and I've got mine mounted here, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit, and then I'm going to put it in the soft suede ink and then stamp off just like I've been doing one time, and then put that image right down here on this bottom corner. These images are quite large, so you need to make sure you put plenty of pressure on there to get a good crisp stamp. And now that is stamped and looks like the poinsettias, both on the flower on the front and in the paper. So that being done, these pieces can get put together. I'm going to use my seal and put these 3 pieces together. And I love this combination of the old olive and the bumblebee. I think that's very attractive. So there we go. And now I'm ready to put some seal on this piece. And I guess the only question is, would we like to have some ribbon on this piece on the inside of the card? Because I did use one of our new ribbons on the outside of the card. And that's very pretty. I think not. I think not. Okay, so what I did do was use my bumblebee marker to mark up these little berries in the middle of the poinsettia image. And that is it for the decorations for the inside. And so we'll be just putting some seal on this and putting that down on the inside of our card base. So here is our card base, and our inside will be decorated and done. And it's a lot of layers, but you know, sometimes Christmas cards are just special. Especially if you can hand them off and don't put them through the post, where if they're too thick they charge you a little extra. There you go. Okay, so now the front of this card is where we're going to do this piece. And I'm going to build this piece first by sort of laying these pieces down so we get the idea of how this is going to work. So because this first bottom piece is cut like 1/8 of an inch more, then this piece is laid right down here next to it, and then I laid this piece down here sort of off a little bit. In fact, it's a little long, so I'm going to give that a little trim. And so this piece is going to go here, showing the bumblebee on either side of it. And then we'll use our ribbon. And this ribbon is called embroidered ribbon, and it comes in a 2-pack, I think. I'll put that detail down for you. But I thought the colors in this ribbon really did match the colors in the card, and I put it down to sort of push away that seam and add one more element to my card. I mean, we've got pretty pattern paper, we've got contrasting colors, we've got this piece which is going to add dimension, and the next dimension that I often like to add to my card is something with texture. So we've got this beautiful ribbon, and I'm going to use it. All right, so I think I'm ready to just get my silicone mat here and start laying down some seal on these individual pieces and put them in place. So first of all, down my old olive piece, and I do think I want to get a little bit right up to the edge on that one. Turn it around so I can watch what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. All right, So this piece is going to have a little bit of a margin and get put in place like that. So there's a tiny bit of margin at the top and bottom and a little bit to the side. Then this piece is going to go in and butt right up next to it. So again, I'm putting some seal on it. The other day I did a video and I had so much trouble with the seal, and I've really not had a lot of trouble. And it was just a defective roll. It had a whole section that was missing some of the glue. So call Stampin' Up! And they're going to replace it. Anyway, now this one's got this pretty flower here at the top, and I'm going to put that so that it is more towards the top. And I'll show you why in a minute here. All right, so there we go. And then my funky little strip here that I'm going to get some seal on. How many times have you thrown pieces away that are this size? I think it's so funny, and then I put a design together and I need that size. I think that's crazy. Okay, so I'm going to set this right down between the edge of the card and the pattern paper and lay that piece down, and then I'm going to clean up the sides to get any excess glue off of there. Then I'm going to lay my ribbon down right along this edge, and I'm going to use my dot runner to lay some glue down on my ribbon and put that into place right across here. It's probably more over the green than it is over the paper, but there we go. Isn't that just pretty? Now, using this ribbon also, I did make a small bow, and I fussed with this bow and fussed with it, and I have since decided that I think part of the trouble is that it's just too big. And so I thought maybe a knot bow would actually be more attractive. So I'm going to cut this little sliver and see if putting a knot bow on there is better. And I think it is. It's not so heavy. This ribbon is very thick, and so I think this knot bow is actually much better for the design. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue dot to the back of that and set it in place on my card. And I might just add a couple more glue dots underneath the ends so that ribbon doesn't move. There we go. I think that's much neater looking, much nicer than this. Okay, so now this piece is ready to go on the front of our card. So I'm going to put my seal down. There we go. Now this is ready to go on here. I think I really like the softness of the old olive instead of the stark garden green. Okay, so the next thing here is the embellishments and my poinsettia. So I'm going to put a large dimensional on the back side of my flower, and I might only use one, and set that down right here on the bottom of my card. And see what a lovely dimension that gives to that flower. Now for my bling, what I did on this card is I used our holiday rhinestone basic jewels. They work beautifully for this because they look like the color of Bumblebee. So I'm going to stick one of those very large ones in here. And what I did on this one is I used a whole bunch of little ones. I put one in the middle. Then I need my new package here because I'm just about out of those over there. And then I set these other small ones all the way around that one in the middle, so that I got this cluster of this beautiful gold color in the poinsettia. And I think I ended up with like 5 or 6 of these things around the outside of it. But it's worth it because they look gorgeous. And then we've got one large one sitting on the inside of the flower here. And then I thought just dotting a couple of these around on the card. And now without the bulk of that bow, that looks like it makes a little bit more sense. And so I know I'm rhinestone happy. But I do just love them. And this would be a special card for someone. And I'm going to add one more, maybe right up in here. And there we go. Now you'll notice that there is not a sentiment on this card, but this stamp set has a lovely Merry Christmas, and it has a great Happy Holidays, and it has a wonderful warm wishes from our home to yours. And I haven't decided yet who I'm sending this card to, so I'm not positive what message I want on there yet. So I'm leaving mine without a message, because you could leave this front just the way it is and add, because I really had a hard time figuring out where I would put a message, and that it might in fact mar the look of my card, and I wasn't willing to do that. So I think even on these two cards, what I'm going to end up doing is putting my message on the inside of the card and not on the outside, just because I don't want to detract from this lovely flower and the sort of look of the card. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. Joining Stampin' Up! Is always a good deal, $125 worth of product for $99, and you start out with a 20% discount. This is August, and my prize for the month of August is a bundle of your choice out of our new holiday catalog. And you can put yourself in the drawing by putting an order of any size on my store, lbettinger.stampinup.net, and you can get to it through my blog, www.inkandingenuity.com. So that is it for me. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I'll be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Bye!